Mr. Calabrese, if the Port of Cleveland is moved to East 55th Street, how would that affect any of your plans?
Well, I think we're very excited about what's happening down in the Flats area right now. There are several plans, several development plans that will bring new employers there. You've heard of some of those already. Some of the major employers in downtown are considering moving there. In addition to employers, they're building townhouses, condos, retails, down in an area that really wasn't as transit-friendly before as it will be when this project is done. So we think anything that happens down there is going to create greater utilization of public transit. We don't think it's wise, and I'm sure you'll agree, to build, along with major developments on the waterfront or on the lakefront and the riverfront, major parking structures. We hope, as people go there to the venues, as people go there to work, they'll use RTA to get there. The good news is the RTA waterfront line that was put in 1996 is there ready and waiting for their arrival.
Mr. Calabrese, you spoke about the economic problems that are facing the Regional Transit Authority. They certainly are many. When the RTA was first started, the entire purpose of the RTA, as I understand it, was to provide low-cost service, good service, to greater Clevelanders. And yet the Plain Dealer reports that your latest request is to raise the fares and also to cut down on the service. Now, is there some way of avoiding that? And particularly, you mentioned the sales tax. It's been reported if the sales tax were raised by 1/4 of 1%, a very tiny percentage, that might generate enough money to avoid the cutting in service and the raising in costs fares that you've suggested. To what extent is there that possibility of generating support for raising the sales tax and avoiding these problems?
Great question. I think, money comes from a variety of sources. Certainly it comes from the customers. I mentioned in Cleveland, about 20% of the cost is covered by the customers, and the average actually is maybe more to the 25%, 22% area. Some of the major cities might be pushing 30, 32%, but we're kind of in the right ballpark. Where we're lacking here in Cleveland, in Ohio, is the state participation. So we certainly can get more money locally, possibly, if the voters approve an issue to increase the local sales tax. But shouldn't we look to get the state up near where other states are first? Give you a couple examples. I compare Ohio to our neighboring, what I call our neighboring states of like population, like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Illinois, all states with about 11 or 12 million people in them, kind of the same mix between urban and rural. Those states, on average, provide about $600 million a year to public transit, versus Ohio's 16.3. Let me say again, 600 million, 16.3. So I think that's where the issue is. Certainly, could we dig deeper? Possibly. But I think we really need to explore the state participation first, because that's really where we're lacking here, compared to other states are funding public transportation. Because of that low participation, the typical state provides about 50% of public transit locally, where we provide about 75% of our costs locally. So, like a lot of things, the burden for public transit is to a much greater degree on the local community and not on the state. Now, the other way to look at it, the state funds highways to the tune of $1.8 billion, then public transit to $16.3 million. So I suggest we look there first.
Mr. Calabrese, along those lines, what is RTA's plan to move the legislature, which is controlled by rural Ohio?
I think that's a great question. That's why we're appealing to you for your assistance. I made a statement at one of the public meetings that I've been relatively unsuccessful in my quest, but it's not because of lack of trying, and they hear from me all the time, and they view me as a lobbyist because I'm fighting for money for my agency, but they haven't heard from my customers that much. But they've heard from my customers in the last couple of months, in the last couple of weeks. Our Citizen Advisory Board, which is very active, they were set up at every public meeting we had with letters, all pre-printed letters to their senators, to their state representatives, their postcards on our buses and trains to the governor. They need to keep their voice heard. The legislators need to hear that from their constituents. But that's one piece of it. I think the legislators in Northeast Ohio get it. It's how to make this the leadership in Columbus to get it. But I think things are turning. I really do think things have never been better for public transportation. People are more aware of the issues of global warming. They are more aware of the issues of environmental concerns. I think the legislators are aware that companies might not want to move back to Ohio or into Ohio if there are some air quality issues here, and public transit is one way to resolve that. I think they're hearing from their constituents the issues with $3.50 and $4 gasoline prices that they've never heard before. So I think there's a trend. I think a lot's going to happen with the election. Are things going to change in Columbus in terms of leadership? We're going to wait and see, but really put the push on. And my board has a big decision to make next month, but I think the decision is going to say that if we have to cut any more service, it's going to be through an action of the legislatures, not an action on RTA's board.
Mr. Calabrese, I can recall when we had electric trolley buses on Huff and Lexington Avenues. A multi-part question regarding the buses that were going to be on the Euclid corridor. You mentioned that they're going to be a hybrid vehicle.
Right. Yes.
Electric, obviously, is a no-emission vehicle. If you were advising another transit authority today on the installation of a Euclid corridor type line, how would you compare the efficiency, both in cost of operation, in capital cost, and in the green effect of electric trolley versus the new electric hybrid that is going to be used here? And if I may, a second question regarding those hybrids: is that a design that was mandated by the feds, who are paying over 80% of the cost of this project, or was that developed locally? Is that electric hybrid a model that is to be used through the rest of the country, or is it simply another choice that's out there? So once again, we're going to be reinventing the wheel with every time we have a major project.
Great questions, thank you. When I came to Cleveland, the Euclid corridor project was already in full swing. It was actually a $290 million project, down from a $350 million project. And the plan back then was to use buses connected to electric overhead catenaries propelled by electricity. Matter of fact, RTA did a joint procurement with the MBTA in Boston for the vehicles. The vehicles were selected. It was a company in Germany called Neoplan of Germany. The vehicles were about $1.6 million each. They're very expensive because of the double installation process you have to go through for an electric vehicle. Went to see the vehicles. We were obviously always in value engineering for this project. And I asked my staff, what premium are we paying to go electrical on this system? And the answer was about $35 million more to do it with electricity because of the cost of the vehicles and the cost of all the infrastructure. So it was very significant at a time when hybrid electric was just coming out. So we made the decision to get this within budget and to get it funded, because if that $35 million was in, it would never have gotten funded, to go with the hybrid electric technology where we'd have tremendous flexibility and not have to stay under an electrical line. So I think that answers one of your questions. And that seems to be the predominant goal in the future. There are very, very few systems in the country, maybe less than a handful, that are still going with overhead catenaries. Those that are doing it because the catenaries are already there, not installing the catenaries with the power infrastructure and the power substations. Compare that to the rail line. It cost me in electricity about $1.56 to move one train car 1 mile. It cost me 80 cents to move one bus 1 mile. So it is more expensive to move a vehicle 1 mile with electricity than it is to move it with diesel. And yes, electricity might be pollution-free at the source, but someone's making that electricity somewhere else and burning coal or doing whatever and causing pollution somewhere down the line because of it. So, that's why we made the decisions, number one, to get a project done, to still have something clean and quiet, to have greater flexibility, and greater aesthetics. If you look at Euclid Avenue, go 30th, 40th Street, look at the city, one of the best things we've done is just to take down all the electrical wires on Euclid Avenue and give that beautiful view shed where you look at some of the old pictures of Euclid Avenue with the wires and the guide wires hanging off of buildings. It really wasn't a sightly situation. Thank you.